So here are the top 5 moves the Chargers could and should make to nail the 2025 offseason, with the last move being that of the most importance. Let's get into it. So one of the first big moves, and I don't think it should come as much of a surprise. I think this specific person has already come out publicly and indicated his interest in either returning to the Bears or returning to the Chargers. And I feel like him returning to the Chargers would be great on both sides. If you don't know who I'm talking about their potential wide receiver 1 or returning back to wide receiver 1 is Keenan Allen. Their current offense right now, being the Chargers, their wide receiver X is Quentin Johnston. I think we all pretty much know, I think we've all pretty much seen throughout the season, he has a bad habit of dropping passes. But nonetheless, this year he has 91 targets, 55 receptions, 711 receiving yards, and 8 receiving touchdowns. We all know about rookie Ladd McConkey, who I was big on last year going into the draft. I still feel like the Bills should have took a shot at him, but I'm not going to go there. That's neither here nor there. But I think he really has been the highlight of their offense this entire offseason. He ends up with 112 targets, 82 receptions, 1,149 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns, also 2 fumbles. Not the best, but nonetheless, for a rookie, I think he had a fantastic season. So when you look at Keenan Allen and what he brings to the Chargers, I think we can all safely say that the Chargers need I'm not going to say a revamp, because they tried to revamp coming into the 2024 season, but they need some added. They need some more juice in their offense for sure. And they need another playmaker for Herbert to rely on when he needs to get the ball down the field. I don't think he had that much this year. Really, outside of Ladd McConkey, I don't think he had a lot of target options. So I think bringing in Keenan Allen would be stellar for them. The last year he had with the Chargers in 2023, he already had 108 receptions and 1,243 yards and 7 touchdowns. So that would have already put him in that league where Ladd McConkey is at and over where Quentin Johnston is at. Now you look at where he was in 2024 with an abysmal team, to be honest, with the Chicago Bears. They came in with a ton of talent that they added in between the draft and the offseason, via free agency, via trade. They already had a lot of players. So even coming into that with a rookie QB, he got 70 receptions, 744 yards, and 7 touchdowns, right? So with less targets, or I should say with more receptions, he still had more yards than Quentin Johnston was. So I think he goes into the Chargers, and he makes a fantastic option for them. He's already familiar with the quarterback. And I really don't think he wanted to leave last year. I think it had a lot to do with them trying to decrease his market value or decrease his finances to make more cap space for the team. I don't think he was having it, so he ends up with the Bears. So I definitely think he would be up to coming back. So as of right now, you have the spot track as far as his current market value. It's showing him as 2 years. 22.1 million, which would give him a salary of about a little less or a little more than 11 million a year, which would put him in like being the 25th wide receiver as far as rankings, which I don't think is too much to ask. I do feel like, again, I'm not a huge outlier as far as like how they deal with the contracts and all those things that matter. So, but I'm sure the front office has a way of making things work, and I really think this would be a great spot for both of them. Both Keenan Allen, who's already mentioned that he would be receptive to coming back to the Chargers, as well as what the Chargers need. If nothing less, Herbert needs key players. He needs star players. He needs people that he can rely on to catch the ball, to be where he needs to be them, to be able to run the routes that they need to run. And I definitely think Keenan Allen brings that to them. Staying on this side of the ball, not only is their wide receiver room needing an upgrade, their running back room also needs an upgrade. So I think that's where you come in and you go out and you find a way to bring in Nick Chubb. I think that would be a huge win for them. Chargers could very well be getting a full healthy version of Chubbs, and a healthy version that they desperately need. It gives Nick Chubbs not Nick Chubbs, a new start, better weather, and he automatically comes into a playoff contention team. Right. So when you're looking at the Chargers and what their rushing offense looked like last year, not even just talking about the playoff appearance, which was like they rushed for like 50 yards, right? So it wasn't crazy in a crazy amount, but their rushing offense was ranked 17th. In 2024, they were 12th in rushing attempts per game, but they were 17th in rushing yards per game, which they average about 110 per game on average. So, AKA, they definitely need a running back help like yesterday. And obviously, we know with Nick Chubb and the injuries that he's been through, the medical review will be crucial. But if you can get a healthy like 2022 version of Nick Chubb, in 2022 he had 302 attempts, he had over 15 yards or 1,500 yards, I should say. He had 12 touchdowns. None of this including his receiving yards. The 2022 version of Chubbs gives the Chargers power in that run game, which they, in my opinion, have not had really since like Austin Eckler. And I think that would be a huge, huge signing for them. His current market value right now, they have him on like a 1 year value, which is about 3.2 million, which to me is super cheap, given that he really should be without the injuries. He would easily be a top 10, maybe even a top 8 running back option if it wasn't for the injuries. So if you can get him and he's fully healthy, and obviously, like I said, the medical review is going to play a huge factor in that. But if I'm the Chargers, I wouldn't mind offering him like a 2-year, maybe a $12 million a year with $12 million a year with incentives, meaning the full amount is $12 million a year. You'd probably have a base of like maybe 4,000 or 5,000, somewhere in that range. Again, I'm not huge on like how to build up these contracts. Obviously, I'm not a finance guru, but I would be okay with handing him like a 2-year contract. And then obviously then being ladled with a lot of incentives, at least for the first year, just to see what his production is going to be. But I still think in any way you cut it, adding Nick Chubbs to your backfield would do you a million times of a solid to be able to bring him in. So now that we've talked about, their first 2 big moves, obviously they're both on the offensive side. We're going to move over to the defensive side because they also need help there. Now, we all watched the Super Bowl, right? We all know how important that front line on both sides of that ball is. The Chargers need help, especially with the potential loss of Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, 2 of their biggest names, and one is potentially on the block to be cut. And Khalil Mack, I think, is still up and down as far as like if he's going to retire, if he's going to play, if he is going to play, is he still going to play with the Chargers? Is he going to go elsewhere? So with all that, up in the air, to fill some of the void, I think a big part of that is bringing in an edge rusher, and I would bring in, me personally, Chase Young. I think he's a good option. He's still fairly young, but he's still like 25 years old, so he's still really young. And he, even with a not so great coaching setup in 2024, he was still able to manage 6 sacks, 31 tackles, 22 of those being solo tackles, and he forced a fumble. So when you're looking at him coming into a team that has in my opinion, a pure alpha head coach like Jim Harbaugh, I think that would definitely be able to get the best out of him as a player. I think it adds depth to their ability to rush the passer, which they desperately need as well. So when you're looking at him right now, and you're looking at Spot Track, you're looking at current market value, is 4 years, $70.1 million is a little rich for me. They say average is about 17.5 million on average as far as what his salary would look like. I do think, again, front office can probably find a way to make it work, maybe find ways to add incentives, add bonuses, whatever the case may be. But nonetheless, I think bringing in a Chase Young, especially in the realm of losing two of your biggest defensive players that you've had for quite some time, I think that would be a crucial part of continuing to grow and mold the type of culture and team that you want in the Chargers. So I think bringing in Chase Young would be a huge steal for them for sure. So talking about huge steals, and we're talking about the front line. One of what I feel is it's not going to be listed as the most important move, but to me it is going to be like the most important move B. So you have an A and a B. So we're going to look at B for this one. And I'm looking at the second overall pick and where they should be looking at with the draft. And I will say up front, from some of the things that we've looked at and talked about, there has been some stuff coming out as far as off field kind of issues that may be going on, that have, I think, some teams, from what I've heard, maybe dropping them down their board or dropping him altogether. But I still feel like if you're the Chargers and you just picked up a Chase Young in free agency and you're trying to rebuild, I think you run, not walk. You run, not walk. You take your ticket to the front line and you pick up Mike Green out of Marshall, for your 2022 overall pick. Now, when we're looking at Mike Green, okay, Mike Green is 6'3". There's been some back and forth as far as his weight. They have him here listed at 251. He's listed at a 4.5 as far as the 40. And when you look at as far as like who he's compared to, they have him compared to essentially like a Jalen Phillips, a Kwity Paye. I've seen several different things there. So while there have been some off the field concerns, I think that have come up, I still think that with the right head coach that knows how to keep his guys in line, he can still learn under some great veterans and become a great player overall. He's explosive. His first step is known to be explosive. His bend around the edge. He has an elite change of direction. Relentless motor. There's nothing else that you've seen or that you've watched. It no more than less. Like, he showed out in the Reese's Senior Bowl practices, and I think that definitely caught a lot of eyes for sure. But at the bare minimum, at the base of it, he's a dog. He's nasty. He showed that in the Reese's Bowl, the Senior Bowl. His tape shows that. I have no doubt he will be a huge piece of their defense on day one. So with that, to the last most important move that they will need to do to completely nail this offseason, and something that's definitely going to help them grow as a team, and I think that is to go into the draft. Now, whether you have to move up back into the first round to get them or not, but I say that they need a tight end. They need a tight end. Like 2 years ago, they needed a tight end. So when you're looking at, in 2024, what their tight end looked like, it was Will Dissly, who had 64 targets, 40 receptions, 481 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Okay, so you're definitely going to need, again, I keep going back to Justin Herbert needs weapons. He needs people that are reliable, that can catch the ball, that he knows that they're going to be where they need to be. And you need that out of your tight ends. I think you need that more so now than maybe you did several years ago. So I think it would be a huge, huge, huge win for them. And I definitely think it takes the cake for their offseason to bring in Colston Loveland. Now, he didn't have a ton of receptions in his last year with Michigan. He had 56 receptions, 582 yards, and 5 touchdowns, right? So he averaged about 10.4 receiving average. But nonetheless, I mean, he's a tall guy. He's 6'5". His last stats have him as 245. He is kind of mirrored up with a Freiermuth type of tight end. I really put him kind of in the, not saying he's going to be, but I could definitely see him in a Travis Kelce role and basically just being a huge wide receiver. And I think that is something that Justin Herbert and the Chargers would absolutely cling to. And I think they should. If there's nothing else, I think their offense showed in their game against the Bills just how much help they needed on the offensive side of the ball. I think their O-line could use some work, and I'm sure they will find different ways to get that covered, whether it be through draft or like the second round of free agency or whatever that might be, trades, whatever that might be. But these are by far the top 5 moves I think they should make to absolutely nail the 2025 offseason and to go into the 2025 regular season with basically all firing on all cylinders.
This has been Between the Uprights. Football is life. The rest is just details.